But when we come back from our break, we'll then give the pitches on like how we would have improved the movie at the time. But I'm really curious what we'll say about this one because it's good.
Yeah. Don't worry, I've said bad things about plenty of good movies.
Well, the goal isn't to be negative. Like we even did like a regular episode on Titanic where it's just like,
excuse me, that's not your goal, Case.
We know where we stand now.
Welcome to Certain POV's Another Pass podcast with Case and Sam, where we take another look at movies that we find fascinating but flawed. Let's see how we could have fixed them.
hey everyone, and welcome back to Another Pass podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Sam Alisea.
Hi.
And listeners, you know what you're in for at this point because we are 2 movies down. We're moving on to number 3 in the Planet of the Apes series. And that means we are talking about Escape from the Planet of the Apes. And to have a conversation about this movie, we are joined by Maynard Bangs from the Reels of Justice podcast.
Hello. I tried to do it like Sam did.
It was a good, it was a wonderful attempt.
It wasn't as good.
I'm going to give it like an 8 out of 10.
Not bad.
But it's pretty good. It was pretty good. I
that
think.
means it's really a 6. When someone says it's 8, it's 6.
Oh, no,
so
not at
good.
all. When I say it's an 8, it's an 8.
I mean, very
never
much a monkey see,
disrespect
monkey
eight
do
like that.
situation here.
Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
So for listeners who are not familiar with your show and didn't listen to the time that I guested on it talking about Alien 3, what is
they?
Reels of Justice?
We are an official fake movie court. So every week we do a different movie, and we have a guest on who either defends or prosecutes the film for being a bad movie. And one of our co-hosts acts as we alternate and go around, and somebody is often either defense or prosecutor. They fill in the other side. And then the other 3 of us pretend to be judge and jury, and we sort of role play the whole thing. It's a very silly sort of debate court. But basically it's based on every movie is 2 sides. Right? There's always something bad you can say about any good movie. And there's always something good you can say about any bad movie. But the point is to prove that the movie is bad. So mediocre movies get off.
Yeah.
Nice.
Innocent until proven bad.
Innocent, yep. Until proven awful.
Which I don't think is going to be the case with today's movie.
No.
The Planet of the Apes movies are a mixed bag, but certainly in the better range of that all. And I love this franchise completely. This fucking movie I love. Escape is such a wild ass movie. I can't believe they made it. It's the reason why this franchise works for me, frankly, because you've got the first one, which is great, and then you've got the second one, which we're going to talk about next time, and it's terrible, and then you've got this one, and this is why there's a franchise.
Yeah, I
agreed.
definitely think so. Especially because it got more affordable with this one.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
They're like
micro budget.
Yes, exactly. And they're like, we can make these on micro budgets and people will still see them.
So, Maynard, what is your association with the Planet of the Apes franchise?
Well, I currently live on Earth, which, as we know, is the planet of the apes.
Yes.
But I always grew up seeing the original one. I think I saw the Marky Mark one in theaters, too. But I mainly only ever really saw the original one. And then one day I went through the whole series. I've only seen the rest of the series besides Escape once. This was actually my second time seeing Escape. So, yeah, I don't have like a huge relationship with them. I do like them a lot. I think this one is one of the more clever ones as far as what they were going to do with it. It's definitely the next best movie after the first.
Yeah, certainly of the original 5. It's like, It's weird to insert the new ones because they have such a different level of quality and financial backing and just, a crazy pedgree in general.
And they're essentially a remake of the last 3 in the series.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah.
So they essentially kind of go over that ground again.
Yeah, it's every single time I'm going to be like, oh, it's a wonderful time loop between all these movies. I do want to bring up, talking about this movie, this is third movie syndrome, which, Maynard, this is my hypothesis that third movies in sequences often are trying to reflect the first movie after the second one, regardless of if it was successful or not, deviated in some ways. And talking about Escape from the Planet of the Apes, if you're not familiar with this movie, audience, this is the one where it flips the script from the original movie, where instead of it being a human in a society full of apes, they take apes from the future and bring them back in time and put it in our society and have them play out effectively a mirrored version of the story from the first one.
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly the brilliance of it is partially it is mirrored, right? Because when the apes get to Earth in the modern day, when Cornelius and Zira, Zira and,
Yep,
and
and
Dr. Milo get here, all the humans are really, really nice to them. Like that's the unusual thing is they are overly kind to these talking creatures that they probably should have locked up from the get and tried to lobotomize and dissect and figure out. But instead they treat them, way different than the way Taylor is treated in the first movie, right? I mean, Taylor's not put up in a hotel. He's not interviewed by all the social magazines and brought to big parties and brought to boxing matches and all that. So in that case, that one's an absolute mirror, in that it kind of flips to the negative.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it does make sense though that they do that because when Maynard arrives, they kind of have like an idea, right, of like what they believe humans are like, and they are shocked that he has speech, but like for the people in the 70s that these apes are going back to, this is a novelty. And what would they do? Of course they would parade them around. I'm surprised there wasn't like a night show kind of thing. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They might treat them like a freak attraction.
I think ultimately that would have been their fate if the movie doesn't take the darker turn at the very end.
Yeah, the point is, there's probably a million parallel universes where this exact same thing happened. This is the only one that they live as long as they do, and this timeline gets to kick off. Because in all of the other ones, they're being lobotomized, they're being dissected, they're being burned at the stake, they're being persecuted as devils or aliens or something. The revelation they make in the middle when they realize that they dissect humans in their time, all the scientists, kind of politicians, are very nonchalant. Well, that's no different than we treat animals now. That's not the way humans behave. Humans, when humans do not think humans deserve to be treated like animals. Like, we are special. We're made by God. We have souls. That's the popular consensus. So it's like, oh, these soulless apes dissected humans, even in a weird future. They'd be furious. The public would absolutely throw them under the bus at that point.
Yeah, if that had fully come out. And I mean, there is Dr. Hasslein, who is not very open to the idea of like apes being the grand masters of the world and experimenting on humans.
Yeah, he's the human Zaius, absolutely. Yeah. But also, he's completely right. The thing about Hasslein is he's completely right. These apes are here. They're intelligent. They're pregnant. They're talking about coming from a future where apes have taken over. And he's absolutely right. Kill the unborn ape baby. Sterilize these two, because they're going to potentially lead to our downfall. He doesn't know that it's a nuclear war and all that stuff. It's not the information he got. He thinks the apes overthrow man rather than man destroying man and the apes step in. But with the information he has, he's totally right. His behavior is justified.
Which is kind of crazy, because that is like Dr. Zaius in a certain regard. Like, he is aware that humanity did so much damage to themselves and is trying to paternalistically control his society, but protect them in that regard. Even if he
Zaius was right.
A monster, the way he goes about it.
Agree to disagree.
Well, I mean, like, it's a complicated thing there, because he does really bad stuff to Taylor specifically. They have this in this futuristic, very theocratic, very conservative society, and I think that deliberately this movie is trying to look at that depiction that we got in the original and trying to then reflect it on our society specifically, and kind of like trying to cast shade on like 70s liberalism. Like, there's this element of, it's like, okay, well, we are accepting of them as long as they're safe, but once we know that they're pregnant and that this is part of this whole sequence that's going to lead to our downfall, aside from the like batshit scene of the president being like, I don't know about due process and all this, where I'm like, real presidents wouldn't do that. They would just be like, yeah, go for it, kill him. They put up a little.
Well, I think as a political move, I buy it, right? Where he's like, elections in November, elections in November.
Yeah.
Yes.
You stupid country. He's like, if they're not going to overthrow the planet in my term, then I don't care.
Right. It's,
Right.
And our villain does make a point, like, well, we don't care he brings up a bunch of stuff. We don't care about nuclear things. We don't care about, climate. We don't care about anything. We keep leaving things off. And he's like, this is the one thing on his list that he can get done now.
Right.
Kill the baby ape.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that the apes would have ended up as like some kind of freak show had they been sterilized but left to live at the end of this all. And I think that was supposed to be like, we like to think of ourselves as kinder than the society of the apes in the Planet of the Apes. We'd like to think of ourselves as less destructive. And I think that this movie is trying to be like, look at how inviting we seem until we are threatened, and then we are just as brutal and scary as the apes that we were condemning in the first one. It's the way that the first movie is trying to reflect human society. This movie is then like making a second reflection point.
Yeah. It's an uncanny universe that we're dropped into, for sure, because like you said, we have a level-headed, nice president.
Right.
We have society people who are actually willing to spend time with evolved apes. We have I know I had a third example, but I can't remember right now. But like, even when the ape kills someone, right, like they're never gonna go after him. Oh, that was it. We have Ricardo Montalban at the end, apparently the kindest circus owner in the whole world, the only person who runs a circus and cares about animals. And it's like, do you know what circuses are, sir?
Mm-hmm.
It's an uncanny world.
What I really love about him is just how willing and ready he is for his ape overlords. Like, he is like, I hope that if you are to take over the earth, that like I am ruled by a creature like you. And I was like, wow, that is accepting, sir. That is wow, that is something. I still
for one,
loved
welcome
it.
our new ape overlords.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, hey, I mean, I feel like it really stems from a feeling of like hating people more. And I that's a mood, and I get it. And he's just like, listen, you can't fuck stuff up more than we already have. So yeah, maybe there is a time for leadership change.
But he owns
nice.
a circus. He doesn't own like an animal sanctuary. He traps animals in cages and displays them to people for top dollar.
Yeah, but the
it's not
firstborn in
humane.
captivity, so he's doing something right. I mean, in a circus, not a zoo. So he must be doing something right. It's the most humane zoo in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, he totally would be like Tiger King if this was made today. Like,
Yeah, and that would be sweet. That would be cool.
yeah, some kind of like ape sanctuary, but it's also like you can pay to come see him. Everyone, here's
Yeah.
all my chimpanzees.
Yeah, exactly.
Watching this after watching Conquest, like in our reverse order, it made me appreciate all the things that like Montalban is doing to be this sort of like huckster, kind of like emphasizing specific points to make people pay less attention to him. Where like when he goes on his whole tear about being like the first chimpanzee born in a circus, like he does the same stuff in the following movie, and it's for the same effect. It's him like really boasting about this like one detail that no one cares about at all, so that people stop asking him questions, because he's just going to drone on about a thing that they don't care about, even though he actually does know the answers to the questions that they are trying to ask, but he's deflecting. And I love the performance from Montalban. He's such like a wonderful addition to this franchise.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a great performance, an eccentric performance. But it's interesting that it's a circus owner and not like a Diane Fossey type character, like someone who thinks so much of apes. I just don't think we associate circuses with kindness and gentleness to animals.
I think their PR was a lot better at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
PR may have been better, but I bet the treatment was even worse.
Probably. But this movie exists in a world where like screenwriters are writing about how they perceive things. Again, there's also this vibe of like, but the principles of the United States of America, we can't kill them without due process kind of stuff.
I laughed out loud during that.
Yeah, no, it is funny. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of president that was supposed to be, and it doesn't even strike me that it's much of a president. Like, would this Dr. Heinlein really get in to see the president? Is he that high up? And if he is that high up, is he a member of the chief of staff? In which case, if he recommends to waste the apes, they're going to waste them.
Yeah. I mean, didn't they say that he was like in conjunction with the CIA, that he was doing the interrogation?
Yeah, like he somehow got the job. He was put on that council in the beginning.
Yeah. He's some kind of science advisor, and he's actually a callback to the first movie where they reference Haslein's theory of time travel or how it like plays with relativity. So they specifically were trying to like allude to a scientist that Taylor was already aware of. So it, like clearly he was fairly high ranking.
I dug the explanation of regressive perspective with the painting and the painter who paints the painting, and he steps back. He's got to paint himself over and over. I thought that was a pretty cool explanation for it, and basically explains why Haslein can see this cyclical sort of potential future that we could be racing towards.
Yeah, and this movie, unlike every other movie in the franchise, actually has sequel bait at the end. So it is actually a movie that is anticipating having some kind of story to follow up from it.
But it could live in its vacuum, right?
It could, yeah.
Because after little Milo is born, we know what's going to happen. We know what's logically going to happen. They told us in the interview about the whole animal. So like, you don't need another movie. You know what's going to happen at the end of this one. So the other ones are a little unnecessary, but if they want to elaborate some stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I end up liking Conquest a lot, even if it like speeds up the timetable in a way that doesn't really make sense. Even in the most, with all the time travel shenanigans, it's like impossible to understand how you get to Conquest in 1993. But still, whatever. Like, it's true. This movie could also just be the end point, and just like leaving it hanging. You're like, all right, yeah, in like 200, 300 years or whatever, it's going to eventually sort of map out that way. And I really like the explanation for the Planet of the Apes that we get in this movie. Like the idea that we would have hundreds of years of apes as pets because we need pets. And they like talk about humanity's own like flaws in that regard. Like I really like being like, people just like they'll kill each other, but they need to have a pet dog, or that kind of
they won't harm their dog.
Yeah, I really like that being cast at our society, and then this explanation of like, yeah, and eventually once we realize that we can exploit them, we will start exploiting them, and like that whole build up over hundreds of years, I think is really cool. Like I think that the fact that none of the other Planet of the Apes movies have really like had like, here's a logical explanation without requiring like some sort of virus that cures Alzheimer's but also kills people, or here's time traveling ape from the future who's bringing his super smart genes, and it's just like going out there in the world. Like this is the only one where it's like, here is a rational enough progression, especially considering the idea that apes just fill in for where we were initially. Like they're not innovating, at least for a while. Like that the chimpanzees like might actually start having real science, but at first it was just like, yeah, the human I was serving had me go into the factory and working, so now I'm going into the factory and working. And then like the foreman just like saw a human shouting at his workers, so he's shouting at his workers the same way, kind of stuff.
Yeah, and enough of human culture had to exist for the apes of the Planet of the Apes to have mirrored it, kind of to observed it and to have aped it. I think that's a phrase. And that's what they're doing. They're aping human behavior because it's what they've seen. So enough must have been passed down orally. I think the apes do have writing. So and written that they understand how they should behave as a society in the wrong ways, maybe.
But the apes that we actually are with are very much the best examples of that society. We're going backwards, so we've spent some time with Caesar, but this is actually our first time looking at Roddy McDowall as Cornelius, and our first time getting Kim Hunter as Zira in our series here, but it's obviously the tail end for their appearances in the franchise. And they make this movie.
Yes. This is sort of, the way I thought about it is Planet of the Apes is kind of Sodom and Gomorrah. If you're going to destroy the world, like, who from that planet should live to go on? Who should be spared? And it's like, yeah, Cornelius and Zira are definitely your examples of the two that should go on, the two that are worthy. You can drop a stone on the rest of them. Yeah.
Cornelius especially is very sympathetic as an archaeologist. Like he was intellectually inquisitive without it being the ickier side of the sciences of the future timeline. Whereas like Zira being someone who's like okay with like dissecting creatures and so forth is like, a little more questionable. And I think this movie does a lot to sort of, she feels so alone and in need of companionship in this time, even though she has Cornelius. Like she doesn't like lying and she doesn't want, it's her having come to realize that humanity has value, like, and being like kind of ashamed of it. Like, she might be like a little casual when she references that she dissected plenty, but like I think she has learned her lesson and is going through this arc in this movie of like wanting to find a place here and then being rejected by humanity once like I said, once she becomes dangerous, once she becomes the mother of, the ape messiah.
Yeah. In that way, she also ends up by the end, like being embittered by it. There's the moment where she goes, "It smells like humans." And Cornelius is like, "You really don't like them?" And she's like, "We've been here for not that long, and we've met so many people, and I only trust 3." And I think it's very interesting. Like, there's an entire arc for her, right? She comes here, she's just very matter of fact, feel bad about this, and by the end of it, she's like, I don't know. I don't know if I feel totally bad about it.
Yeah, when someone imprisons you and then tries to hunt you down and kill your baby,
and sterilize you, yeah,
it might sway your opinion a bit.
Yeah.
But I still think there's the ambiguity whether what Zero did was wrong. I mean, these were considered to be lesser creatures that were being sacrificed to save the lives of, apes, to them who had souls and had purpose. And, we've killed countless animals in the name of science to save human lives. We've shot plenty of animals into space. All of that is based on this idea that the human life is more valuable than anyone else. And I'd say in the ape society, it's the same thing. The ape life is more valuable than anyone else. I think even from the beginning, she doesn't like the humans beaten and stuff, but she has no problem with them dying for a good cause, for the gain of knowledge and science.
Yeah. I think she comes off as very sympathetic in that regard. Like, while the Planet of the Apes franchise, generally speaking, doesn't have heroes, like they'll have protagonists, but everyone has like some kind of moral ambiguity, some kind of flaws. Cornelius kills a guy in this movie. Like, sure, it's an accident, but it kills a guy. Like, and it's not a huge trigger for him. Obviously, he's stressed. Obviously, he is very, like, there's a lot of things going on, but it's, a fairly innocuous comment, and he like shoves this guy into the wall and crushes his skull. Like, yeah, again, like not on purpose, but like every character, even the most sympathetic ones, have moments of like kind of darkness to them, or like areas where they have failed. Taylor is not a good guy in the first movie. He's just trapped and alone, and we sympathize with him. But I love these characters. Like, we haven't really talked about Kim Hunter yet. This is our first time seeing her in one of these movies in this, since we're going in the reverse order. But she is fantastic. Like, her performance as Zira is so great. Like, her like doing all the different tests and like finally deciding to speak and having that be like such a big moment there. Great stuff. I think she's incredible. Like, I think that her performance really sells it. And then her relationship with Cornelius, played by Roddy McDowall, it now actually playing his original part, as opposed to his own son. Like, they're so charming. You understand why people love them. Like, in the court scene, like, it's in the trailer, it's in it all over, but like everything that talks about this movie is like, can he speak also? Only when she lets me. Great fucking line.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a very funny line. But
the
you look
media
at that,
is putty in their hands at that point.
Yeah, but you look at it compared to the first one, and when Taylor speaks, it blows all the apes' minds. I don't know if it blows the humans' minds quite as much as I think it would. And immediately, when going back to the apes, they're immediately incredulous that Taylor's actually speaking. It's a trick. It's either ventriloquism, or you've simply taught him to ape sounds, but he absolutely can't think. But the humans don't have any kind of doubt like that. They're like, oh, they're talking. They can even testify for themselves in that court, whereas Taylor was not allowed to testify for himself in court in the original movie.
Well, I mean, kind of, because they are primed. Like, the congressional board that's witnessing it, it's like, oh no, they have acquired the power of speech. So it's not out of the blue. It's not like Taylor's situation where he's like running around and like says it in front of like just the public unprompted.
Yeah, it's like the scientist has already uncovered it, and so although he admits it right there in front of the general counsel, because I think they have a human vouching. It's like that kind of thing. Like, a human's like, no, it's really them.
Well, and then they also try to be like, oh, it's just a parroting kind of situation. And actually, chimpanzees have been taught to make sounds that are like a parrot. It's just they can't make a huge range, and as far as we can tell, they don't understand what they're actually saying when we've done it.
But the skepticism of the apes is much higher than the skepticism of the humans.
But also then the ones who they first speak to when Zira says, "I loathe bananas," like those are this movie's equivalent of Cornelius and Zira. So
yes,
they in the first movie, while Taylor wasn't able to speak physically because he had injured his throat, like they were receptive to Taylor writing notes pretty quickly. So like I think we end up with these sort of like parallel scenarios. And like I said, I think this movie is trying to be like, at first humanity seems way more accepting of them, only to turn around and basically do the same thing. It's just they have this veneer. It's like the Pride Month discussion with like businesses, where it's just like all of a sudden there's rainbow flags and so forth, but it's at the same time, but it's like also capitalism is crushing you kind of moments, where it's like the hypocrisy of like trying to appear so like congenial and like forward thinking and progressive, but at the same time being like, oh, but we want to crush the unions and like have our business interests. Like I think this movie is trying to like condemn humanity, being like, oh, if you didn't realize that you're being on display in the first movie, we're gonna pull that back, and it's just gonna be fully on. Here's human society as good as you think it is, and they're still shitty.
Yeah, I can see that. Also, I just want to say, just because we talked about humans just loving how the apes were embracing and becoming sideshows. I loved the getting close scene. I loved the classic trying things on, and
yeah.
I love that. That's so fucking weird, and I appreciate that that's in this movie.
Yeah, the montage. That's the tone of this movie. That's why they can't dissect them, and it's not darker. It's a comedy.
Right.
This is distinctly a comedy until it has sort of a bleak ending, but it's absolutely supposed to be a funny movie.
Yeah, and they are so fucking charming. Like Cornelius, like I said, constantly. Yeah, he's great at that. Like when, like Dr. Cornelius, what do you think of our women? Very human. Like, yeah. great lines. Like, and it shows his.
What's your favorite fruit? Grape.
Right. Yeah. I like that also. Noting that like we never really saw them having like drinks in the future. Like it was this kind of, like I said, theocratic state, so it kind of feels puritanical in a lot of regards. So it would make sense that Zaius, or whatever sort of orangutan authority that kind of was trying to keep apes from finding out too much about vice and so forth, like would have restricted that access to those kind of things. So it makes sense that Zero wouldn't have had alcohol up until that point.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I guess it's the 70s, but they should know enough not to give alcohol to a pregnant ape.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. That whole scene right there is fucked up because he knows she's pregnant. It's not even like he's not aware of it, and he knows more about... Like, it's understandable that she would not know that wine is bad for you when you are pregnant. It is... But Hasline knows, and he's definitely doing that just to put her in a situation where she can rat stuff out, and because he's kind of okay if the baby has complications as a result of being fed alcohol.
Yeah.
He says it's good for the baby, I think, after he gives it to her.
Yeah, he does. Like, he's totally encouraging it. Yes, babies love this. It's good for the baby. What a jerk. It's perfect. He's perfect.
Yeah, babies like red wine over white, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, grape juice.
They don't like
baby.
They don't like the sparkling, the bubbles.
Yeah.
Give them gas.
Yeah. They like bubble baths, not bubble drinks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That should be on a plaque somewhere for new mothers.
But yeah, I mean, like talking about the first half of the movie, it's so light and charming in general. There's also their friend is just murdered in front of them early in the movie, so there's that. But like the whole sequence of them just as celebrities out in our culture is a great time to explore how an outsider would look at modern America, and with all the resources to see the best of it. Like they're being treated as celebrities, so they're staying at luxury hotels and like being taken to shop at these things, and clearly have a pretty big budget. Like no one ever gives a number, but it seems that they're like, they could just pick up suits and it's fine. They could pick up these outfits that, like, God damn it, look like pictures of my grandmother, like from that era. Like, I think that's also a thing when I'm looking at this movie where it's like, yeah, this is like, it's set in 1973. It's from 1970. The outfits and whatnot, or 71, pardon me. The outfits just are such of that era.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Speaking of the friend of Dr. Milo, is this a point where I can talk about things that I would change if I could?
Well, we're kvetching at this point, and we'll take a break in a second and actually talk about what we would do.
Okay, sure.
differently.
I'm going to sit on that. But yeah, Dr. Milo, I mean, just to discuss him, I mean, he's the one that gets there. And yeah, he gets strangled by a gorilla. And I guess that's the point of establishing. I mean, we already know, but I guess it's to establish to the apes that apes in that time are still savage. You know, because otherwise they would not have seen them. Maybe they wouldn't have known. That's the only reason I can really think of having a gorilla strangle him to death.
Yeah, this movie carries over the racism that the first movie has of the different ape groups like disliking each other. Like immediately they're like, oh, they'll have a friend. There's a gorilla, and they all like get mad initially, and like every time they bring up gorillas, they're always really mad, which is, you know,
Yeah. Don't
The
call
thing
them a
from those
monkey either.
Yeah, that's definitely the racial parallel right there.
Yeah, yeah, which is impossible to divorce from the Planet of the Apes movies. Like they are trying to have commentaries about it all.
Well, it's the point. Without the commentary, they're certainly not as good.
So the actor who was playing Dr. Milo apparently was having panic attacks while wearing the makeup, and so they had to move his death scene earlier. So I wonder if that's why it's a gorilla as opposed to something else. Because like it's so fucking fast. Like they get there, we've got like one real scene with him, and he's the only one who can provide exposition that is outside of the realm of what we would expect Cornelius and Zira to know, because we've been with him a fair amount at this point. So he's the only one who could be like, hey, let me explain how we got off the planet, because there's no way Cornelius and Zira would have been able to do it by themselves.
Yeah. I mean, there's still no way Dr. Milo could.
It's crazy.
Really.
Yeah.
It's as if we could we drop a spaceship in the middle of Rome, and their top scientists could reverse engineer it and get it flying. No, they don't know anything about current. They don't know anything about flight and aerodynamics. They got 0% chance of ever getting this thing off of the ground without at least thousands of years of research. At least they have something they can kind of copy to learn from. They'll get a head start, but he's not going to figure that out in a little bit of time.
Right. But, I mean, at least he's a different person than the ones that we had just seen in the previous movie, which is set only like days before they arrive on Earth. So it's, in terms of the timeline, it's like, all right, at least there's this other exposition box right here. But then they kill him really early, so that's it. Like he's not much of a character. He doesn't get his name in the opening, like, when it's like going from ape to ape, showing their like the actor who's playing them, like they just like skip him completely.
Well, yeah, he was having panic attacks. I mean,
yeah,
I'm surprised
I get it.
I'm surprised they didn't recast him.
That's actually a big thing that I'm wondering about. And it's probably because they had shot some of it, and like there's only so much time, and the makeup is difficult to make in the first place because you have to get the mold of their face.
Know who's under the makeup is the point. If you use him for the first couple of scenes, he can't finish the rest. You recast him. You can't tell under that makeup.
That's true. There's barely any scenes with him, so it's not like there's that much that they would have.
It's him taking off the helmet, maybe in the ocean, and then you've got the scene where he's in the zoo getting strangled.
Pretty much.
So you've got to still credit him in the credits. He's Dr. Milo in the beginning, panicking Dr. Milo. But I said definitely could recast him. But yeah, I mean it's we can get into it more, but I think there are other ways to get them to the past than trying to get an ape to fix up the ship.
Yeah, especially a ship that we saw get submerged in water, and like it's just like one of those like details, like once it was pointed out.
Well, is it Taylor's ship or is it Brent's ship?
It's supposed to be Taylor's ship, because I think Brent's ship is like totally destroyed. But either way, the thing that we see them pull out of the ocean at the start of this movie is just like the nose cone, which was like the only thing they actually had a set for, because the rest was supposed to be submerged in water when in the first movie. So it's just funny of the reuse of this like set piece there. What do you all think of the actual opening? Because the original script called for them to actually be shown leaving the planet and see the time travel stuff and then arrive, and instead they decided to open the movie with it in the water and humanity pulling them out, and we get that like big reveal of like, oh, they're actually apes under those helmets.
I really like the beginning of this because you've got the rocky shore. You're going to Planet of the Apes. You see the ocean, so your brain immediately is that you're on the Planet of the Apes in that time, and then you hear the drone of the helicopter, and it immediately orients you and places you in time. and you realize where you are. You're in the modern time.
Yeah, and I really like, the fact that they're like met, at the shore. It's like, gentlemen, welcome to the U.S. And then they pull off their helmets, and everyone's like, what? Why are there chimps inside of those astronaut suits? Like, it's great. And the face on all of the soldiers that are staring at them is perfect. And I even think because the first half of this movie is comedy, it plays so well into the following scenes, which is just all of these three military guys staring through cages, through bars at these three chimpanzees who are now putting on clothing that they brought in a suitcase. And it's hilarious. So it leads to like this really hilarious kind of, and setting the tone of like what at least the first half of this film is going to be. So I really like the beginning. And I think I do like it better than the idea of them kind of showing the planet or even the journey or even any of the things that Zira described. I think it's better. And I think also, like, I don't think they might have had the budget to show us what really happened. Yeah. So I think it's actually more clever to do it this way, and kind of like, oh, shoot, that's where we're going with this film. And so then that sets the mode for you, because you're like, okay, what's going to happen now? And then it's comedy for a long time. It's amazing.
If you were going to do it, you'd have to do it in a flashback, because you don't want to take away the reveal of taking the helmets off. You don't want to take away what they do in the beginning. So if you want to go back and later do a flashback of it, you could probably do that. But at that point, your only purpose of that is showing off your special effects. If you don't have the budget to do it, there's no reason to do it.
I agree. I think it's a really effective start there. And then we get the Jerry Goldsmith score, which is way lighter and bouncier than any of the other scores in the franchise. Like, it's got this like sort of like California surfer vibe to parts of it, and it's like just like it's selling that this movie is going to be more lighthearted. It's a softer touch kind of movie. It is not as brutal as the successor, and it is not the first two movies. It's so different in that regard. Even if the story structure is the same, just the circumstances flipped. It's still just very different from the aesthetic of the first two Planet of the Apes movies.
Well, it becomes a comedy because it's sort of mirroring the first one. It's almost a parody.
Yeah,
it's bordering on that. So, parodies tend to be comedies. So, it definitely works. It's like if they treated Taylor awful and locked him up in a cage. What's the nicest they can treat the apes if they're here?
Yeah, and like there is a conversation about how this reflects the original novel better than the first movie, because in the original novel, the apes have an industrialized society, so they are more accepting of the Taylor character in the book. Like, he's able to communicate with them, and they're able to have conversations about how ape society works and how it's different from his world, quote unquote, because X, Y, and Z reasons. But there is still that kind of pressure that is put on him, and this movie is showing that, like, even this a more enlightened, quote unquote, society will still behave in this primitive way, this territorial, primal way when they're threatened. And I think that's a good vibe. Like, it makes so much sense. They did not have a lot of money. Set the movie in modern day and have it, have only two actors wearing ape makeup throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
I do want to call attention to Natalie Trundy in this movie. She doesn't have a huge part. She
knocks it out of the park.
She's Stephanie Branton, or like Dr. Stephanie Branton, the female scientist in this, the Zira equivalent for it all. So this is actually at this point, it is her second movie in the franchise. She would go on to be tied for the most number of appearances in a Planet of the Apes movie, and that's because she was married to the producer. But in the next two movies, she would play Lisa, the wife of Caesar. And she's in Beneath as one of the mutants. So by the end of Battle for the Planet of the Apes, she is tied with Roddy McDowall as the most number of appearances in a Planet of the Apes movie. Though at this point, Kim Hunter, having been in the first two and thus three movies, has the most at this point, because Roddy McDowall was not in Beneath. He was recast because he was not available for their filming dates. So this is actually only his second time in a Planet movie, or a Planet of the Apes movie. And obviously Charlton Heston did not want to come back for this franchise. It was like, fucking kill me, blow up the planet. So all the things from the first movie could only go so far into the second.
Does Cornelius play a serious role in Beneath?
He's in it. He's recast. He is smaller but they show up again. Like, but both Cornelius and Zira have smaller roles in Beneath, where when Brent comes and finds the community, they take him in and sort of like set him up on like and explain how they should do stuff. And then he goes off and confronts the mutants, and the movie switches back.
You look just like someone we know. You look just like Taylor. Like if he came from Wish.com, that would be you.
Yes. So, last thing I want to talk about before we take a break is that the third act is dark as fuck. It's thematically, obviously, it's very well lit. But it's not super exciting because it's like a low budget kind of thing. And I think that for people who are looking at this movie and wanted to have, like this is the first movie where the apes are the protagonist. I think that if you were going to get the younger audiences really into it, that it kind of needed to be a little bit more action packed at the end, because the first half is this like much more adult kind of like, dramedy.
Yeah.
And then like it's still a serious sequence at the end, but it's not anything that's like really like pulse, like every time I rewatch it, I'm surprised that like really they're not on the run per se from the police. Like the police are like after them and like the military's after them, but there's no like real confrontation. It's just Dr. Hauslein who like confronts them and shoots them. Like everyone else is like staged off.
It doesn't have action, but it has tension.
It is tense.
Yeah.
I like
you care about Cornelius, you care about Zira, you want to see them be fine, so you are really invested in them getting away. And so every time they're close to getting caught or confronted, it affects you.
I think there's also the added tension of the fact that that there have been direct orders to the doctor to take the apes back alive. And he is so really obsessed with the fear of what is coming, whether it is right or wrong, because honestly, you possibly could have righted it if you had just been nice to them. But right or wrong. And so there's this fear that he will do exactly what he did and basically go rogue. And so he is the reason why like Cornelius and Zira do not make it out of this situation, because he has direct orders. He's told to take them in calmly, and he still goes in alone. And he goes in specifically to make sure that the baby ape is taken. But I think that there's something more malicious behind that, and I'm glad he died. Spoiler alert.
I mean, but he's still not. If his goal is to avoid this future, I mean, how are you going to take these apes alive? One half-heartedly smacked a guard and crushed his skull.
Well,
he wasn't even trying. He wasn't even mad.
But I feel like I think that in trying to avoid this future, he created he actually created what the future is going to be, right? Because if you react to it in fear, sometimes what it does, it actually pushes people to be exactly what you thought they would be. And so pushing Cornelius and Zira to kind of to kill their baby and actually to be sterilized and give up their ability to have children, that pushes them on the run. That pushes you into the future. If they had been able to look at it and come to some sort of, like a higher ground thought and love, maybe you can change this future. I mean, I know that the creators have a very like nihilistic cycle going here of destruction, whether it's human destruction or ape destruction. However, I think no matter what, the point is that every time, and this is like the interesting thing about this series, every time someone gets close to like reaching a level where people can be cool and be friends and apes can be cool and people can be cool, someone messes it up, and it's usually because of fear. Fear motivates it. So this doctor pushing and pushing and pushing for, we've got to stop this future. We've got to stop this future. He caused this future. He caused baby Milo to be an orphan. He caused him to rise as Caesar. He caused the apes to take over faster than they would have if they had taken over the way that the timeline originally made. The doctor is fully the villain because his pushing for fear pushed the apes to a space where they had no escape. And this is like mirrored in humankind. When we treat people with fear, hatred, brutality, people end up becoming the worst of themselves. When you treat people with respect, love, and kindness, people are better. And the same thing would have happened. And if they had just been allowed to live like in a hotel for the rest of their lives, gotten jobs, integrated into society, there is no other ape yet that can speak the way that Caesar speaks. There is no other thing. And despite the headcanon that Case has about a virus and all of that causing things to go faster for the next movie, which is so much fun. I totally agree. I just feel like these movies constantly show you that like the destructive pattern is on us. And if we continue to embrace fear and continue to embrace hate and all of those things, then we will never get out of our destructive patterns. The Doctor causes it. He is the reason for the Planet of the Apes in the 1990s.
I say, really, it's his superiors that cause it, because they shouldn't have sent him in anyway. They should have said, "No, you're too personally attached to this. You're staying home. Like you can't go. Everyone, keep this guy away." So once again, bureaucracy has failed. The Doctor's just doing his job.
Well, I don't know that he would have not gone though, because I think at this point,
sure, but then you arrest him.
But
then you arrest him, right? Like this guy's not allowed near this prison. Like you see him, arrest him.
Well, but I think
and take him back.
I think that he makes a good enough point, though. I think that like he's persuasive enough, and I think we see this a lot. Just mirrored in humankind. I think that like a lot of fascists have this kind of ability to kind of talk to people, and throughout the whole movie, he's very good at just sneaking in the things that like would like make someone afraid, and so like yes, he wants the eradication of both the apes, right? That's what he wants, but ultimately he'll take the little crumb of victory that is getting rid of the child and sterilizing the apes, which we would never, we have. Oh my gosh. Yes, we have. It is a demoralizing thing to do to humans. And it's a demoralizing to do to these creatures, these apes that are very much like humans, these chimps, right? Like sterilization is a tool that many governments, fascist and otherwise, have used to hurt people, hurt entire groups, indigenous groups all over this planet. This is like a horrible, horrid thing that this Doctor is okay with. And that the government is like, yeah, okay, we're going to be lenient. We're going to say they can live, but they can never procreate. And that's on us. We're going to take away their ability to do that. And we're going to kill the only child they were ever going to have. That is cruelty. And that's on the Doctor.
And the government.
Yes, and the government.
Yeah, but he's pushing that.
He's pushing it because he went to
the
look
government
for
doesn't have to. Governments don't necessarily listen to doctors when they suggest things. We all know that.
No, that's true, but he's very persuasive, right?
What he should be pushing for is finding out the cause of the upcoming plague that wipes out cats and dogs, and trying to prevent that. Pushing for an agenda that people should get goldfish as pets. And birds and other things that won't rise up, and then pass a law where it's illegal to get pet apes.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that it was just really funny that they brought this up in this. And so he was so gung-ho on killing them. And then by the very next movie, they have pet apes. And I was like, and they've sped it up almost. Like, wouldn't have someone written it down or announced it or something. So, yeah.
They have the tape recording of her saying it.
Yeah. It's almost like a fear response where it's just like, well, if we enslave them, they'll rise up. So we have to enslave them even sooner.
Yeah. Everyone makes the wrong choice.
Yeah. Including the marketing department for this. Because did you all watch the trailer for this movie before this recording? So the trailer is like one of the most frustrating trailers I have ever seen, because the last shot of the trailer is Zira getting shot. Like there's no mystery at all in it. Like the entire story is spelled out, from them arriving, being like Milo being killed, like the scene of them in front of the congressional boards. Like, can he speak too? Only when she lets me. That whole thing, them being celebrities, them like him killing the orderly and then going on the run, and then and then killing Zira at the very end. Like it's the entire fucking story. So like, if you saw the trailer, you don't need to see this movie unless you just really want to see this movie. I have never, I shouldn't say never, because also the trailer for Conquest then it ends on Caesar in front of the fires, like shouting about the Planet of the Apes. So like, I don't know what's up with the Planet of the Apes trailers, but they just want to tell you everything before you even get there.
They did that a lot during this era of movies, though. Like, so much. Like, it's ridiculous. They would tell the whole movie for some reason. And lately, I feel like we've been going back to that. When I go to see a trailer.
I don't know.
People
not
didn't want
this
to
bad.
see the movie unless they knew the ending would be satisfactory. There's so many movies with bad endings. I want to go in knowing it's going to be a bad ending. Just tell me the ending. If it's good, I'll still see it.
It's just mind-blowing to me that they would make this movie and have all of that, like, have everything out there.
70s was a simpler time.
Yeah. I mean, there's a full-on narrator being like, and now they're on the run, and thus they must escape from the planet of the apes.
So, yeah, subtlety wasn't a thing in the 70s either.
No.
Yeah, you got to know what's the in-between. That's why you go. The details. You didn't have the details, Kate.
Education levels were just lower. Literacy levels were much lower.
God, and Cornelius could have fixed that. If he had just been allowed to stay and become a celebrity, he could have become a TV doctor talking about like education and literacy.
Mm-hmm,
like,
he probably would have run. He would have run for governor or something.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was actually a really cool scene was when they go to the museum and they're like actually like walking around like all the fossils and so forth, because like, oh, this is their history too, but they've actually always been denied the ability to research like further back into the timeline. So like, that has to be really interesting for them, where it's just like, oh, I've traveled to the past and now I can learn more about my actual past. Like, I think that would all be very cool.
Yeah, you would think she would attend like more history classes or like enroll at a college, and take some history courses.
Yeah. Instead, this movie just kind of wants to be like, look how weird celebrity culture is. Like
or she attends the feminist meeting and it's like, yeah, but Cornelius is like treats you very well, so it's
right. Yeah.
Like, this is not really something you're familiar with.
Yeah, I think she could have chimed in, being like, in my time, the most apes are like this kind of thing would have been a good way to do it. Or in my time, we are all egalitarian in that regard, and like it's kind of crazy that you all aren't.
Well, in my time, in the future, in the planet, we've evolved making our bed. It's very useless. Don't make your bed.
Don't make your bed.
A waste of time. You're just going to sleep in it again later.
Just have a nest of you just have all your blankets and whatnot in like a little spiral, and then it's just like the nest that the apes make in the jungles, but now with sheets.
So
and
you're really getting back to nature in a beautiful way.
Going back to basics.
Yeah, I do like that scene though with Zira like pretending to be. Not pretending to be a feminist, but, you know, like echoing what everyone is telling her, because that actually does become kind of a character trait for her, where she's socially uncomfortable in so many scenes that she either plays along or like pretends to agree to things, or sometimes reveals stuff because she's just uncomfortable. And like, it's nice to sort of set up that like Cornelius fits in really well at this time, and Zira doesn't quite. Like she's still cool and she's still doing her best, but it's not as natural for her. Whereas like Cornelius just seems to like, it like fits like a glove when he's here.
Well, he's got one great shocking moment that they kind of didn't go into enough. And when he's at the prize fight.
Oh yeah.
Just everyone's screaming violently and he's just shocked. And it's like, yeah, this should be sinking into you. You're in a society that is way more gorilla than chimpanzee, dude. Like, like humans are not very smart, but we are very violent. And I think, and they don't do anything with it. They just kind of leave it.
Yeah.
Well, they use it as a moment for like a one-liner note, like for one of his one-liners, which everyone laughs at. And
everyone laughs at it like it's a one-liner, but it's not a one-liner. Like he just says brutes, and like it's not funny. And he's completely serious about it, and everyone laughs. But it's like, no, he's dead serious. You are brutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of should have been the point where he's starting to see the society kind of crack in front of him, like.
Start seeing the parallels to what he escaped from.
Yeah. On that note, I feel like we're kind of like just circling talking about things that we kind of liked about this movie. Why don't we take a break, and when we come back, we can talk about the things that we would have changed.
Hey.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, you know, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
And we're back. All right, so Maynard, we've got one rule for the back half here, which is that I am not allowed to go before Sam. So you're our guest in terms of throwing out pitches of how things could have been fixed or just whatnot. You can either go first or you can elect Sam to go first.
I'll go first. So one of the big things that bugged me is Dr. Milo. We kind of got into it earlier. I don't buy that he could fix up a ship and actually get it to fly, or even, let's say it didn't even, like, they do say they fly away from the planet before it explodes, though. So, I mean, he clearly gets it airborne. I think there's got to be another sci-fi way of getting them to the past. Even using a nuclear blast, if that could somehow jostle them into the past in some way. That's not any more really explainable. It's very science fiction-y, but they've established that society is so primitive. There's just no way he's fixing up that ship to be operational. And I would, since you brought up the makeup, I would recast that actor, knowing that he was having trouble in the makeup. Like, so sorry, but we're not changing the story for you. And because I think Dr. Milo, he dies so abruptly that he could fulfill a role as the true scientist member of the group. And his death later, instead of being at the hands of a girl, it could be at the hands of a human, who actually kills him. They accuse the humans of killing Dr. Milo, and then they're like, oh no, it was one of your own kind. But, if that was like Haslin's first step into violent madness was to kill Dr. Milo at some point, that would be like a greater progression. It just feels like his death is really wasted so much that he's basically a Deus Ex Machina device at the beginning, right? It was like, how'd they get here? Oh, this ape who fixed the plane, and well, he's dead now, so don't worry. And only Cornelius and Zero are here now. So definitely Dr. Milo would be one that I would fix up. I know it's also micro budget, but I would probably have put more budget into the masks. I know that the masks look better in the first movie than they do here, and there's only 2 of them. So for them to look kind of as Halloween-y masky as they do, I think just putting a little bit more money towards getting that to be clean would probably be better. I know that Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter were very unhappy in the masks for this film, especially because they were the only ones who had to suffer through it. So I don't know if they put less makeup on to make them more comfortable or something, but I would not have gone ahead and done that. I also would have tried to cover up Ricardo Montalban's switcheroo a little bit more subtly. Basically, he once the cops are walking out, he's like laughing and chuckling, and I think that basically spells it out for anyone who's paying attention that he got away with the switcheroo, because we see the ape and we know everything, and it seems pretty obvious there. So I think the switcheroo is already a good twist, but the twist would be, I think, even more effective without listening to him laugh and chuckle that entire time.
Yeah, I mean, that, it's funny you mentioned that one, because I wasn't even thinking about it, because for me it's just like, oh yeah, well, the twist is that Milo is actually, like, with the chimpanzee there. So it's interesting that jumped out at you, because for me it's just like, oh yeah, that's the next story beat.
Yeah. Well, it's just he was laying it on a little bit thick, I think.
I mean, it is Ricardo Montalban.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I brought up a lot of the other ones kind of previously but they're really not problems to fix. It's like Apes probably shouldn't be drinking wine. It might have been nice to see the wine brought into more like what the effects of the drinking really are on 2 creatures that have never done it before. It just sort of makes her candidly honest, but like it could actually make you like savagely violent. And if you wanted to explore that more, that would be one direction you could take with it. Or the further directions of Cornelius in the boxing match, exploring more of the violent side of man. And I think that kind of comes down to, what we talked about. This is a comedy. They're keeping it very light. They're keeping it whimsical for a lot of it. because otherwise all the other stories are about them like just dissecting them and locking them up and persecuting them, which I think is more realistic about what would happen. But yeah, I mean, throw it to Sam, and I might think of some more.
Yeah, I like where you're going with that. I actually also agreed that I felt like Dr. Milo, like it was just so sudden. I was like, what? Okay, I guess he's gone now. And I agree with you. I don't think that it needs to be the gorilla that does it. And in fact, I'm going to piggyback on your ride. I'm going to say he lives, and I'm going to say that he's the one who has an issue with drink. Maybe some people get a little like, giving him more and more and different kinds of alcohol, and he kind of like breaks something, and there's a bar fight, and he hurts someone, and the government puts him down. And I think like that would be kind of interesting, because now you've got these two other apes. They're like, no, but it was like, not his fault. Chimps, sorry. And I'm just like, they're insulted by me. And like just kind of have them, have that kind of be the catalyst for when things kind of flip the flip the script. Sorry, I was like switch, no script. Flip the script so that's when the darkness starts coming in, because it's like, or you maybe don't put him down right away, have him like on trial, that kind of thing. We actually have a pretty short runtime, so we could add a couple, scenes to this movie. Wouldn't be a problem, but
I wouldn't add much.
But I wouldn't add too much. Like I'm not looking for like To Kill the Mockingbird.
Yeah, well, let's keep our movies
like,
around 90 minutes. All movies can learn from that lesson. Nobody's got all day to watch a movie. Let's keep it 90 minutes. That's a strength of this movie, is keeping it 90. They keep it tight.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. It moves really quick. Other than that, I'm actually really fine with this movie. That's honestly the only thing that I would kind of change, is keeping Dr. Milo around a little bit longer, just because that death seems so unnecessarily short. I mean, would I love to see more Armando? Yes. Would I love more of his amazing, very kind, all freaks welcome, animals totally loved circus? Absolutely, because that is a fairy tale that I love. So totally down for that. Totally down to see more of that. But it's not necessary, it's not. I
think the extending Dr. Milo, like you said, letting him maybe have the one that trouble with the drink, having that extra ape allows you to show one of the apes that doesn't fit in. Because, I mean, Kim's a little uncomfortable, Zira's a little uncomfortable, but like otherwise both the apes blend into human society pretty smooth and without much of a hiccup. And
and they're a toast
don't
of the
know
town.
that I would buy that happening. And so if there was one ape who did have trouble adjusting, who's just the technology blew his mind, and he couldn't handle it, and he was like, you guys can talk, like a telephone would blow his mind, right? Even though apparently he can fix a spaceship,
but just like a character who's so like, because he's like sold as like this genius. Like they say that he's like a once in a generation like intellect amongst their people. Like if he saw this like this world with all these like wonderful technologies, and then also humanity is also just shit, that could really break him. And I like, because I have the same note, which is that like Milo's death in the first act is way too soon, especially if the second act is going to be spending it as a comedy. It's going to be lighthearted and charming and so forth. And like they just had a third of their race die. Like it's a messed up situation. And like sure they could bounce back from it, but they seem to be like pretty okay. Like he just died, but we're back to being okay pretty fast.
You know what they never crusade against, and Dr. Milo could be a part of it, but they never stand up to nuclear proliferation, which they know the effect it's going to have on the planet. Not only in the first stage, but in the second one too. The ultimate complete destruction of the planet. Besides infighting, it's also nuclear weapons, and it's never brought up or dealt with. Dr. Milo could easily play a role in that, where he's like, "No, listen to me. These things are dangerous," and
he's too outspoken, and thus he has to be silenced.
Crap up, yeah.
Like he could be at a protest, and like a cop could like bust his head in or something.
Yeah.
And because I do think it should be human, and like it can be an accident, or it could be like him being in the wrong place, or like he's put down because he's still technically an animal. Like have that element going there too, because I think Milo would have afforded them more opportunity to have this exploration of like how human society reacts to them than just the two. Like, and I think we're all kind of on the same page. Like his death too soon, is a rough spot in terms of like the tone of this movie, because like then you then jump into the lighthearted stuff after that, and it's instead of the turning point into things getting bad.
They're not particularly distraught for all that long.
Right. It's so weird. That part's just strange. And like, I get it. He was having problems, but you could have either recast or you should have screened the person for it. Like, when you're trying to like bring in the third person to be your ape in this movie, like, why didn't they do makeup tests? You know, don't go, you know, I realize that some of it's expensive, like, but like, check and see that they can function for like a day or two with like some kind of prosthetic on their face. Like, maybe not as fully made up, but like, you know, the prototype or whatever that they were working on. Like, make sure that he's going to be okay filming all these scenes, because he's a new cast. It's not like an established person that we have to like bring back and like deal with. Like, they could have had literally anyone, and they definitely had actors that knew how to wear the makeup, because they just did 2 of these movies.
And again, they're under makeup. So it's the easiest recast in the world, you know? Ed Wood would die for such an opportunity as this.
Yeah, bring back the actor from Beneath who played Cornelius, and then it could just be really weird. It could be like, oh, well, we're actually a polycule. And like, yeah, cool, whatever. That's like, chimps have big sex parties. That's fine. Like, really, bonobos do more, but...
You know a lot about this. For supposedly innocent man.
No, but bonobos famously like have orgies for basically anything. Like, find new food, orgy. Got away from a predator, orgy. Like, it's a matriarchal society where the women keep the aggression down by just like having sex all the time. Yeah, bonobos, great stuff. So I share that big note. The other things I have some nitpicks, like the fact that Cornelius outlines, you know, in very authoritative detail the history of the Planet of the Apes, is often seen as a continuity snarl in this movie. For one thing, it is then different in the next movie. Like, they call back to it, but it's like sped up. But it also doesn't match how in the first movie it seemed that they didn't know shit about their history, and that Dr. Zaius had really suppressed it. So either Milo could help sort of establish like why they have more of an authoritative stance on it all, or Cornelius could sell it as being like, all right, well, since the Taylor incident, we have been able to put more information together. I've had access to additional files that had been like, you know, kept under wraps by the orangutans. Side note, Milo could be an orangutan, and that might have been kind of interesting also in there. But even regardless, like, if it's Cornelius doing the selling point, he needs to be saying it like, I have inferred now that I know this thing, it means that this holiday is probably a celebration of X, instead of, you know, saying like, and every year we celebrate the day he said no. Like, it's a good delivery there, but it doesn't actually make sense for the what we know of the character at that point. And I get that in 1971, sequels generally were like, you only kind of need to remember the previous movie. We'll refresh your memory on the stuff you need to know, kind of stuff. They're not expecting people to have like the fine-tooth comb of continuity that we are seeing with like the MCU or something. But it still is a weird part where he's just like knows that, okay, 300 years from now, start having apes as pets. 200 years after that, the first ape says no. Like, and you know, and go on. Like,
him having
off
the
of that.
timeline is weird. I think him knowing that they say no, that could have been a religious, you know, fable. I don't know how much detail. I can't remember us getting that much detail from the religion, but certainly there is a depth of information within the religion.
I mean, it could have been like tormentor demons, and then we realized like, oh, they're actually humans. Like, we put the pieces, now that we know that our history, like your history is our history, like we have put these pieces together, and so we had this fable, and now we understand that if you decode it and you pull it away from the mythology, it fits like X, Y, and Z. I just wish it was like a little less like rock solid in terms of how he presents it, so that there was wiggle room in it. It also gives wiggle room for the sequel, because then him presenting like, oh, it must have taken hundreds of years, but eventually they were your slaves. Then it gives them the wiggle room for the next movie to be like, nah, it was really more like 17 years. It would just protect them a little bit, especially because they knew they were planning to do a sequel. Even if this could have been the last movie, the goal was to do a sequel after this one, because somehow even Beneath made money.
Yeah, I think you can probably, if you know the gestation period of I guess we don't really know the gestation period of a chimpanzee human sort of evolved form, but even at that, like, what's the exponential growth? Like, how many can they possibly make in 17 years?
Oh, it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we talked about this on the last episode, because it was just like, oh, it's not even like enough time. Like, they haven't even been like slaves that long. Like, they're like, obviously any length of it is bad, but it was just like, oh, that's a lot of growth on that one. And it only works if Caesar is the carrier of a virus that causes apes to get smarter around him, by way of being from a future timeline where in a different timeline, a Caesar had a virus and then caused the Planet of the Apes to rise up, and then bringing it back in time caused an accelerated rate of that progression, which I'm totally cool with that circle of all the Planet of these movies. Especially because Rise does such a good job of living out the story that is told in this movie. Like, ignore the whole dogs and cats all dead part of it. Like, ignore it's like, okay, we they were brought into your household and then eventually they became slaves. Like, they are slaves in our current society. Like, that's the point of the new movies, where like apes don't matter, we're testing them. It's just like what we were saying, like we're putting them in rockets that are too dangerous, we're dissecting them, we're putting drugs in their systems, and then if they're not helpful to us, if they're no longer a good circus performer, we put them in a cage somewhere, and then they're just sad and they're being tortured just by cruel people, and we treat it like it's our mercy upon them. These movies are not trying to have big like animal rights conversations, but like it is interesting that you can incorporate that theme and have it actually like fit really well. Like it's one of the testaments of the strength of the more modern trilogy.
I think this movie definitely touches on the animal rights, though. When they say, dissecting humans, it's no worse than we do to animals now, which again, I just don't think any elected official would say that publicly or even privately, because again, I think that's not the way they take humans. But I think this one definitely does have the testing. And again, there's something else Dr. Milo could do. He could witness some of that testing on animals and create parallels to it.
Yeah, so I agree. I think Milo needs to be a more outspoken character. I think that the timeline that they present, while great that they do, needs to be a little less set in stone. And then apparently they got footage of them fleeing the planet. It's not just that it was in the script. They actually had footage of the rocket ship leaving. It was never finished. It doesn't have any of the special effects. It surprises me that we don't get any kind of flashback when they're like later talking to them like on the ship or anything like that. And it's also surprising that we don't use footage from the previous two movies at any point. Like, this franchise loves to do diegetic inclusions of scenes from previous movies. They love to be like, here, let's turn on the screen and see the footage of like Caesar talking or Cornelius talking, or whatever scene that you want to talk about. And it's surprising that they didn't try to incorporate any of that in them lying, but also like maybe do some shots of like the stuff in Beneath or of the first movie.
I know they at least show a shot of Taylor kissing Zira.
Yeah. So there's some, I guess what I'm saying is like, it'd be interesting to set up the fact that they're lying and remind the audience that there are points where they are lying about their knowledge of the future, like, or at least withholding information, and use footage of that. And I think that could also be used then to get some of that footage of them fleeing the planet as well in there. And it would be quick, so you wouldn't have to have like the full special effect on it. But it, like, even a shot of them just like in the capsule, like looking up like through a porthole, like you don't even see the outside, would have been like interesting to show. And I get budgets. I fully understand that might not have been in the cards, but like knowing that there was some of it shot, I'm just curious, could it have been worked in without messing up the really awesome opening where they, pull their helmets off and it's like, oh, you thought you were in for one movie. It's a totally different movie.
Yeah.
And in the flashback, Lucius is running up because he's late because he slept in. And he tries to grab onto the rim, and Dr. Milo steps on his hand and kicks him off.
My last note is that, and I was saying this before, I think the third act, while I like it, I don't think it was going to win bigger audiences. I think this movie is just good. So like the conversation is, how could this movie have been more successful? And like, it was 2 million and it made 12. So like, we're talking about still a successful movie in most scenes, but I think that it's cool that we're finally following the apes as the protagonists. I think that a lot of younger people are going to come and check it out because, like, look, it's apes and apes are cool. But then a good chunk of that movie is like them living as like, again, like kind of this more mature dramedy kind of component. Like, it's really funny stuff, but it's like or it's lighthearted, but it's like an adult world like that they're in. They're like, they're going shopping. They're being like going to weird ass parties where people are on exercise bikes for some reason. There's political conversations. It is not the gripping like, oh my God, we're in a society full of apes and they're riding on horses with nets and chasing us down, like kind of stuff from the first movie. And so I think that the third act needed a little bit more tension on the run. Like, I think that we get good scenes of it. Like, I think the final confrontation is pretty much perfect. Like when Hasline shoots Zira, and then like Cornelius shoots him, and then like they all get gunned down by the military and whatnot. That's all perfect. But I think we just needed a couple shots of them trying to find a safe place to like hole up, and being like cut off by the military, or being, you know, having like a little bit of a chase. And like some of it is just that, you know, we're talking about two actors in their 40s in like heavy prosthetics. Like they're not going to be able to do like crazy kind of like
you could put
action beats.
You could put stunt people under any of that makeup.
Also true. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
just not
Yeah,
difficult.
exactly. And like as we keep saying, you know, they could have any makeup on them. They don't even need the like hero masks. They could have like much cruder prosthetics that just like look kind of right from a long shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it's not the era of like parkour or something, but like how fucking cool would that be to have like them like running with their baby, and like, you know, like they're running up through an alley, and like, you know, military jeeps like pull up, and so they have to like start climbing up a fence, and, you know, like, you know, playing to the fact that they're apes, like, you know, have climbing be a part of them trying to elude everything. And that shipyard is big and a very cool set piece, and would not require like a lot of like construction or anything to make it all work. Like you could just have them like have scenes of them running on a boat and then like sliding down like a ladder and then moving on to the next boat. Like it would still be really interesting. Have some helicopters chasing them, you know, just make it more dramatic, because I think that after the first half of the movie being like lower energy in that regard, like it's light and fluffy, and it's not it's going to appeal to an adult audience more than it would to a kid audience. But I think this movie being a G-rated movie is, despite the fact that they are all about murdering children in this movie, like it, as a G-rated movie, the intent was that for it to be parents bring their kids to see it. Maybe not the littlest kids, but at least like, you know, high school kids.
I don't know if they're going to murder children. I think children is the term for human. Like a human offspring is a child. This is an ape offspring, so it's not, you know, it's whatever you call a baby chimp.
Sure, but
They have some name. They've got a name.
But and they also kill our heroes, like they get gunned down. Like it's a brutal ending.
Still not humans, but
yeah, it's still not humans, and apes don't matter.
that's it. Exactly.
Oh.
That would be the ultimate way they take it.
But yeah, so that's my big thoughts on it. But I was very tempted just to write no notes, because it was commercially successful enough for the project that we had, and I fucking love this movie. I think you know, we keep saying it's the second best after the original. Like it's charming as hell. Like it nails everything it needed to nail.
It's tied with the Simpsons musical version of Planet of the Apes.
Which is amazing.
Stop the Planet of the Apes! I want to get off.
Yes.
Yeah, I've made Case sing at least one of the songs every time.
while you were up during the break.
I hate every ape I see, from chimpanzee to chimpanzee. But yeah, no, this is an excellent movie. I think it mirroring the first movie is genius. I think it being a lighthearted comedy is the right way to go for this franchise that already is so dark and laborious. Like, if you're going to go through all of these films, this is a great breath of fresh air as the third movie. Like, you're re-energized and ready for the next two. And you've got the two most likable characters from the first movie back. So you've got some fan favorites returning there. And they set up the cyclical nature of the next three films. This is kind of where I consider the next three films, they were kind of a standalone trilogy in themselves. And so like the third film decided to kind of go start its own trilogy. It opens that possibility too. So yeah, everything we're saying is nitpicky. It'd be nice to see more of Dr. Milo. It'd be nice to explore some other stuff, but this movie's doing everything it needs to do.
Yeah, and it's a fun movie. I mean, even if you hadn't seen any of the other films, you could watch this and still have fun. You might be like slightly lost, but yeah, they usually give you some backstory. You'll be fine.
I'd at least see the first.
You could watch
one,
this,
but
you could.
Yeah, you could.
You could just have fun with this.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I was watching this movie, where it's like, if you were coming in totally blind, would you be able to follow everything? And I think they do a pretty good job of selling you on it. And it just helps that like Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter are just like fucking great in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets them out of the corner that the last movie painted the franchise into, right? Because Charlton was just like, screw this, blow up the planet, and no more Planet of the Apes movies. And they were like, well, you know, I think here's how we can get back.
Yeah, not many franchises can have the world end in their second movie and then go on to have 7 more.
Yeah.
I too also wanted to say no notes, but I didn't want to be accused of yet again setting a coup, as I have been the one time I did it.
What did you coup?
I refused to another pass Disney's Hercules.
Yeah, and then got one of our guests to join her in her coup.
I was like, is it flawed? Yes. Do I love it and it's perfect? Yes. No notes.
Yeah, I mean, the things we're saying are also matters of budget and recasting. You know, so I don't know what the script looked like as is, but yeah, if we can recast that guy so he could be in the movie longer, great. If we can kind of make the prosthetics and makeup look better, great. If we can get stuntmen into those prosthetics to do some more action-packed escape things with 1970s parkour, I don't know. I'm sure they had it, but it didn't have a name yet.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like,
hobo crawling.
Yeah, I just don't, like, I don't know how much is realistically, like, how much wiggle room we would have with this movie. It is such a small budget. It was, you know, so creative to write it the way that they did. And they were locked in on a bunch of it. So, yeah, there's only small stuff that you could change. And I honestly think that the movie is not a bigger hit just because more people didn't see it. You know, if it wasn't coming after Beneath, which is not a good movie, but a lot of people saw, then I think that this would have been a stronger entry in the franchise. But it also definitely needed to be number 3, because I don't know if Beneath was a better movie, I don't know if you would have made this movie.
Yeah, well, and if Beneath didn't end the...
Right.
You know, and destroy the planet, yeah. Which is part and parcel of making it better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this would have had to been told anyway, because I think the way this franchise works is that cyclical timeline. So I do think it would have happened. It just might not have been 3. Could have been the 4th. Could have been the 5th.
Yeah, but fucking wild, man. Like, for a movie that started off about being like, yes, you know, astronauts going faster than light, you know, arrive back on Earth accidentally. It's now all apes. Oh, now time travel, and we're going to have a 70s rom-com sequence. Like, all right. Wild fucking movie, wild fucking franchise. I'm so glad that we're talking about them right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting as a G movie, too, because, I mean, you could see this movie, if it were made now, like, they would have done a lot more of the darker stuff, right? I mean, they would have done, you know, apes getting drunk, giving into the indulgences that they didn't have at their time. You know, these two live very conservatively, you know, they're not going out and getting drunk and wild, drugs. You know, it's the 70s, but no one does cocaine or anything.
Milo should be doing cocaine.
Yeah.
There you go. Milo's coked out, and he's talking about how nuclear proliferation is going to take down the world,
Yes.
man. He joins the Black Panthers,
Amazing.
and he gets beat down in a protest.
Yeah, I love it.
God, that would have been great. It's we spotted the big flaw in this movie, which is just that Milo is taken out too soon, and it could have been dramatically really interesting.
Yeah. You know, because you don't really want to see Cornelius or Zira do it. They're sort of meek and humble, and they're like
and they're also like the perfect couple, right? We want them to feel like the sitcom couple. We want them to feel like, you know.
Well, they have to be the parents, right? Because they're gonna have the baby, and you have to hope in your heart of hearts they can have this baby and raise the baby well. Whereas Dr. Milo could be the coked out rock star all he wants, and no one will mind.
Well, so here's a question for you, Maynard. If this was on trial, would this be ruled as a bad movie or a good movie?
Oh, it would totally be not guilty. Completely be not guilty. I think most of them would get off except Beneath. And gosh, if I had to fight for Beneath, I might be able to argue about the things that went well enough. but yeah, no, it would definitely get off. We did do the Marky Mark one.
Yeah, I listened to the episode.
Remind me if we did guilty or not guilty.
I believe it cited on.
I think it went not guilty based on how good the practical effects were. I'd have to go to my database of
yeah, that's one of the first ones I listened to, and
is not a Google Doc spreadsheet. There are people who think it is a Google Doc spreadsheet, but it is not. It's a high-tech supercomputer where we keep all our verdicts stored in a mountain protected by a dragon. Oh, we did find it guilty. Well, we did find it guilty. But yeah, I know that the technical stuff is what was really heralded, and the monkey human sex was unappreciated. But that's what I'm saying. It's like that is where stuff would go nowadays. If the movie was made now, there would be a lot more talk about like Dr. Milo, coked out rock star, having orgies. That's what he would do.
So for listeners who kind of zoned out at the beginning of the episode, give a reminder about what the podcast we're just talking about actually is, and where can people find it and where can people find you?
So Reels of Justice is available everywhere, Spotify and Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. You can find us at buzzsprout.reelsofjustice.com. You can just Google Reels of Justice too, because I'm pretty sure we're the only one. And basically, it's a fake movie court. We pick a movie every week. We have a guest on who either prosecutes or defends it. And then one of us takes a turn as the alternate, whether we need to prosecute or defend it. And we try to determine if the movie is guilty of being a bad movie. And that's a lot to prove. Bad movie, mediocre movies get off. Meh movies get off. It's got to be an actively bad movie. And then the others of us, we take turns as the judge and as the jury. And then we deliberate at the end about what the arguments kind of swayed us and didn't sway us. And we come up with a verdict. So yeah, you can find it anywhere you find podcasts, basically. I'm also, I've started a new YouTube project with a buddy of mine, which is probably of a similar interest to your guys. And we call it Fix It in 5. So it is kind of like your show, but it's 5 minutes. And so we have to fix it in 5 minutes, and we have a chess clock. We each only have 2.5 minutes. We have to make a point as fast as we can, and then slap the clock to go back to each other.
Oh, that's
so
fantastic.
because he wanted to do a fix it show, I'm like, there's fix it shows. Let's try to fix it in as small a time as we possibly can. So it's called Fix It in 5. At this point of recording, only a few episodes have dropped, but if you're listening to this, maybe there's been half a year of stuff out by now. And that same friend, we also have another YouTube project called Trailer Trashed, and we watch trailers and we get trashed. So it's kind of a review show, but it's kind of mystery science theater as well, because we kind of riff the trailer and mock the trailer. And we're usually putting out at least one or two of those a week as well for any major trailer releases that come out. So be interesting to see if that project's still going on now while you people listen to it. But if you Google Trailer Trashed, you should be able to find it out there as well.
Yeah, people should absolutely check out all of that. I did not know about Fix It in 5, and I'm going to check it out as soon as we get off this call. And if on social media, if people wanted to find you specifically, where could they find you?
I'm at Maynard Bangs on Twitter, but I don't really use it much. So it's easier if you just follow Reels of Justice, at Reels of Justice on Twitter. I'm usually more responsive there. And we're on Instagram at Reels of Justice and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice. You can join our Facebook page, and then you can join our group, which is called the Film Jurors. So we try to talk about, we can post up ideas of movies and we can discuss if they're good or they're bad. And always follow our social media for our recommendations of justice that we share all the time from each one of our episodes. We're always taking recommendations from guests, so we're always sharing those out on our social medias too.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice part about your show. Like, not just being like, all right, we talked a lot about this movie, but like, what else is good that's out there that someone would actually want to talk about?
Yeah, that was it was our co-host Big Ben had the idea. It was like, can we ever say good things about movies? It's like, can we close the show with a palate cleanser, like a recommendation? But we frequently recommend movies that are not good. That's the thing. You're supposed to recommend a movie that you think people should see. That doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
I want you to see bad movies, and I want you to suffer the way I've suffered. So we've almost recommended every Charlie Bronson, Bronson Thompson collaboration movie that happens.
It's still a nice breath of fresh air at the end of every episode. And so people should definitely check out Reels of Justice. They should check out Fix It in 5, Trailer Trash, all that great stuff. Maynard, thank you again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me. And we'll have you guys on soon to defend and prosecute
I
something
swear
else.
I won't use the Beowulf defense.
That is a lie. He probably will.
It works for
He
every
probably
movie.
will.
What can you do?
If it's there, he will go Beowulf. He will.
If I can find it. Next time it'll be the Gilgamesh defense.
Oh my God.
Sam, where can people find you and follow you?
They can find me here on Another Pass or on our Discord when I remember it exists. And then after that, nowhere else, because I am going to find a circus that treats animals really fairly because I love that fairy tale. So I'm going to go find that with people flipping, and it's going to take me a long time. So you are not going to be able to have any access to me because it probably doesn't exist. But if you have any comments of anything I said today and any complaints, or you just want to talk to Case about Beowulf or the Planet of the Apes, you can find Ace at.
You can find me on Twitter.
I called you Ace, didn't I, instead of Case? I don't know what's wrong.
It's okay.
That's my friend's dog.
Acey Casey.
Ace is my dog's friend. My friend's dog's name.
Ace.
Case. Sorry. It's a very adorable dog.
Case the Ace.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Case Aiken. You can find the podcast at Another Pass. You can find more episodes of this show at certainpov.com, where you can also find a link to the Discord server that Sam mentioned before. Check that out. We have a great community that we're building. You get sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, fun discussions. You should also check out the clips that we're putting out for Another Pass. So they're called Quick Passes. They're on our YouTube channel for Certain POV Media. So little bites from the episode, but animated. So check it out. I've been really happy to put those out there and just have another format for the show to be out in the world. Check all that out and then head back over to certainpov.com, where you can find the next episode of this show. Sam, what are we talking about next time?
Well,
This is the Forward Pass.
the Forward Pass, everyone. Next time, brace yourself. We'll be talking about Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Boo!
But until then, if you enjoyed this, pass it on.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe and review the show on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Another Pass is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Sam Alisea and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Matt Storm. Our logo and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our intro theme is by Vin Macri, and our outro theme is by Matt Brogan. I don't know why I Dream of Jeannie just popped into my head. Maybe we were talking about the 70s.
Wasn't he an astronaut in that? So doesn't that kind of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was. I believe he was also a colonel. There's a lot about space and just people who worked around space in the 70s.
Yeah, seemed to be it was huge in our zeitgeist, so it makes sense that we would talk about it ad nauseum in everything.
Indeed. Dr. Zaius. Every time.
Oh, Dr. Zaius. Can I play the piano anymore? Of course you can. Well, I couldn't before.
I wonder if Matt is tired hearing this since I've made you sing it every time.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.